Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz game number 233. I was white here, and I kicked off with d4. My opponent replied knight f6, a very flexible move, allowing a lot of different continuations for black. What he chose here was g6, second choice, knight c3, and d5, also the second choice. The setup known as the Grunfeld. And the main line of playing against the Grunfeld is to grab the center here. Although you don't have to play this way. There's lots of other ways to play. Knight f3, bishop f4, bishop g5 look like interesting tries. But I've always taken the big center when I'm given the chance. And I've had pretty good luck with this over the years, so I think I'm sticking with this. So that's how you get the center is you take the pawn first, bring the knight to the center, and then you kick it immediately with e4. And the knight really has nothing better to do. It could just retreat somewhere, but he hasn't really gotten much of anything. The idea black has is to exchange that knight, let you have the big center, and then set about undermining it. And a perfectly good way for black to play, although he sometimes has to play in a very enterprising fashion in order to justify this somewhat of a concession here, giving up the center. But he does have an advantage in development. He's going to get his pieces out, and he has targets for the pieces. So you have to react as white. You have to react to black's threats, and so it gives black some initiative. Now the most popular move here these days is knight f3. When I was learning the Grunfeld, I learned this other line starting with bishop c4. And the idea with bishop c4 is that so c5, you see these are all the main moves, is that you can bring the knight to e2. And with the knight on this square instead of on f3, if the bishop comes out to pin on g4, then you can play the pawn to, so bishop to g4, pawn to f3, and kick the bishop back. And so that's the big idea of getting the bishop out of the way first, putting it on an active post here, and then getting the knight to e2 so that you move the bishop first so the knight doesn't block the bishop. Okay, so this has all been played before, of course, and a fine way to play. Knight c6 or castles. Good responses here, but just intensifying the pressure on the center. And you always have to keep counting. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers. So this move bishop e3 is almost required because now you need a fourth defender. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders on it now. And then black castles. My castle. And then c takes d4. This is a bit unusual, but a playable move. What I see most often is either queen c7 or the knight a5 move. But let's talk about queen c7 because it's kind of interesting. After queen c7, you really need to play rook to c1. You can see that's the top choice by far. And the problem is if you don't play rook c1, what's going to happen is that there can be an exchange here, and then the knight can grab this pawn potentially with tempo because the queen is going to have an indirect attack on the bishop. So what you do is you play rook c1 in order to, after this exchange, pawn takes, the rook is defending the bishop, and it's not subject to discovered attacks by moving the knight. The other way that I've seen a lot here in this position is knight a5. The knight coming to here and harassing the bishop. Usually will drop back to d3. So, but there are many ways to play. So bishop g4 is still an idea here, provoking f3, and then bishop d7 it looks like is an idea as well. I have not seen that move either. So c takes d4, a bit of an unusual move, but still quite a few games played like this. And now finally we're out of the book here with my opponent's next move, king h8. So up till now you can see that white has the usual kind of opening advantage, but no big deal. Black is still doing fine here, and he should probably play one of these other moves. Bishop g4 is the top choice here. The engine likes knight a5. Yeah, similar kind of idea as I described before, just harassing this bishop on c4. A6 it likes as well. Okay, so those are moves you could play. My opponent played king h8, and now this is kind of a slow move, really. Black needs to play kind of actively in this Black needs to play more actively in the Grunfeld to try and justify his giving up the center. He has to get his pieces out and start doing things. So we're out of the opening book here. Let's just look at the notation tab. Rook b1 is the move I chose here. It's interesting that it's the top engine choice, because I was thinking after I played this that he might just chase my bishop back to here, and then why is my rook on the b file? And he does this, but he plays a6. I go d5. Maybe d5 is not the most accurate move here. It's always a little tough to know what to do with the center. The center is not under any pressure right now. Well, it's under pressure, but it's adequately defended right now. I guess that's what I want to say. But at the same time, I have these three pieces tied up defending it. I can't move any one of them, or I will lose a pawn. So after a while, you eventually sort of get tired of defending it and just move the pawns ahead, just so your pieces are free to move. Now, what does the engine think? The engine thinks a4, queen d2, h3. So the engine thinks I should continue to hold on to the center and maneuver in such a way as to maintain control of the d4 pawn. But when I'm playing this myself, I often find it's just a lot easier to play to go ahead and push this d pawn, or sometimes the e pawn. Sometimes it's better to push the e pawn and try and blunt the bishop. But do something to kind of clarify the situation in the center and relieve all these pieces of their obligation of having to defend that pawn, and giving them the freedom to move out and make other threats. So that's why I play a move like d5. And of course, it's very important that I move the rook away from the corner first. It's one of the main tricks, one of the many tricks, I should say, in the Grunfeld, but a constant theme is this pressure along the long diagonal. So you have to time your moves carefully, get the rook out of the way before pushing the pawn. So Black replies knight e5 here, good move. And maybe that's the biggest drawback to this push d5, is it opened up the e5 square. And so now I don't have that kind of big advantage I had before. So I dropped my bishop back, sort of blocked in my rook. And so this was the position I was talking about. At this point, I was wondering, well, maybe I should have just put my rook on c1 instead of b1. But you never can tell. Well, maybe you can if you have the ability to calculate that far ahead. Now, that was a mistake. I'm starting to... The other point of d5 is opens up the square d4, so I can oppose his dark squared bishop with mine, and if I can exchange that off, that generally helps. So after bishop d4, what's it recommend? It recommends bishop b7. Okay, I think we will see this idea later in the game, so let's just go on. So this queen move was not the best move, because it allows me to go ahead with my plan, which was to push on with f4, kick this knight out of the way, and force an exchange of bishops. So the knight goes to c4, and now I take his bishop. And then I play this check. And I thought this was actually a good move, because I thought I was winning a pawn over here. But it turns out he's got a defense, right? I thought, well, this just looks like a fork to me, right? Queen comes here, attacking two squares, right? Attacking the king and attacking the attacking the c5 square, and after the king moves, I can just grab this knight here. But he has a way to defend here. So I should go ahead and just grab the knight right away, and that will create a future target for me with a pawn, an isolated pawn on c4 that I can go after, and that'll be a good position for white. So just taking the knight is a good move there. Queen d4 check, and he plays e5. I guess that was the move I missed. Yeah, I didn't think of him playing e5. And this is a very forcing kind of move. I need to really need to do something about this pawn. Well, it's attacking my queen. If I take en passant here, f takes e6, then he can exchange queens. And I wasn't sure that was any good. I considered this during the game, so let's check it out here. D takes e6. Queen takes, check. I take back with the knight. And then, yeah, he just grabs this pawn with his bishop, and the knight is well defended, and I don't get enough pressure here, I guess. Knight takes, pawn takes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It does mess up his pawns, but it's removed so much force that the engine just rates this position as dead even. Okay. So that wouldn't have been any good. What I did play, the engine also says I could just try moving the queen away, queen a1. Kind of a funny move, putting the queen back in the corner. Didn't really think about that one. So I just took the pawn here. And I thought he really needed to take back with the knight, because queen takes, which he played here, just allows me to take his knight. But there was one mistake in my calculation, I think, here. Let's see if we get to that point. Bishop takes, queen takes, d4 check, knight takes, b takes. No, that's the way I planned it. Yeah, so those were all okay moves. So I guess it was kind of a forcing sequence. Yeah, after queen takes. If I take the queen first, he just takes back with the knight, so that accomplishes nothing. The point of taking the knight first is to force him to take back with a pawn, and so yeah, let's put that back on the board. And then he's got this isolated pawn that I can attack, so it's a weakness for me to go after. So he can throw in this queen takes d4 first. In fact, he needs to, because I've taken away the defender of the queen, so the queen had to go somewhere, and then I have to grab the queen back, and then he grabs my bishop. Yeah, so that was pretty much a forced sequence. And now I just go after the pawn with rook b to c1. It says king f2 or rook fe1 would be better. So play this, and he plays rook e8, attacking my e-pawn. And that was the way I played this way, because I figured I would bring this rook over here. Yeah, this is the point I missed during the game that I wanted to show you. I thought I was just winning here, and in fact I do go on to win the game from this point. Not to give anything away, but black here has a very clever defense. So I've got these two pawns that I need to support. They're my advantage, and I'm planning to just win this pawn, which he can't. He can't defend this pawn. But what he can do is he can attack my pawns with this move bishop to b7, and then if I grab here, he can just take. And in fact, this is actually good for black. So the important point is that there's a pin on this pawn, and I can't take his bishop back, and so now I've just got to move my rook somewhere. It says rook b4 is best. So we back up. This bishop b7 move I think is very interesting, because it's putting pressure on these pawns. It looks like the bishop can't do much there, because it's attacking these pawns which are set up to oppose it, but it's taking advantage of the pin on this base pawn, and it really is threatening to take the d pawn, taking advantage of the pin on the e pawn. Okay, so my opponent missed this idea and just played rook b8, and now I have the advantage here. I grab the pawn, and with careful play, I think this is a winning advantage, because not only is it an extra pawn, but these are good central pawns, and this one, particularly the d pawn, is a protected passer. So a protected passed pawn. So, but he gets some counterplay with rook b2. Now it says rook c7 is the best way to play this. So it's often the case that you need to stay active in the endgame. So instead of passively defending the way I did, just actively attacking, with the rook on c7, I'm going to maybe make some threats against f7 here. So I came back to c2, and he just retreated his rook to b4. I guess these are all okay moves. I certainly didn't want to lose a pawn, but it's interesting. Yeah, let me think about this a second. Let me go back to this position. So the engine is recommending rook c7. The question is, what happens if he just takes this pawn? Do I get d6? Okay, so I have my passed pawn, and the rook on c7 is just helping to support it. So this is a big threat here, advancing to d7, forking these two pieces. And if he plays rook here, and just e5, so my pawns just keep coming forward. Very interesting. And then I can bring my knight in, perhaps chase his rook away, and advance the pawn all the way. So it looks like this is a winning position for white. So I was maybe needlessly concerned about holding onto this pawn. I have just a stronger initiative, just pushing through the center. Okay, I played rook c2. He retreated his rook, and got my rooks behind the two pawns so I can push them forward. And this bishop move, bishop to f5, is a bit of a tricky move, but not especially good. Let's see, what's the recommended move here? h6. Well, he's still in trouble, I guess. But now the point about bishop f5 is I can't take it with the pawn once again because of the pin on my e-pawn, but I can take it with the knight, and this gets into a more simplified position where these pawns start rolling forward, and black just can't stop them. He tried rook e4. Yeah, so rook e4 is not well, actually it's one of the engine choices, isn't it? Okay, it's just hard for black to find a good move here. So this was an interesting try, but it comes up short. I can just take and then push on with the d-pawn, and he doesn't have a good way to stop the d-pawn. He tried rook d8, and then I can just come forward to my king. One other idea I was a little bit worried about here is what happens if he plays e3. Okay, that is one of the engine moves here. It says I could go rook d5. Yeah, I was hoping this would work. And then if he pushes on, my king is in time to come over and stop the pawn. So it's close. If this pawn had been one step closer, I might have been in trouble there. But so that would have worked out okay. So so d6 is all right, and rook d8 is a reasonable defense. He just doesn't have a lot of good moves here. And then I can start bringing my king forward. I can round up his loose pawn here. He tried f5 to hold on to the pawn, but I just took that. Let's see. It says it's even stronger to just push ahead with e6 and get the pair of passed pawns here. I took en passant because I was going to round up this weak pawn. This is also winning. And I just have this extra pawn on the king side now that I can use to distract his king away at any time. And this is a winning king and pawn endgame, so he can never actually take this pawn with his rook, because I will grab the d-pawn. If he takes the e-pawn, I'll exchange rooks and then grab the e-pawn, and then I'll win with the extra pawn on the king side here. So he's reduced to just making kind of meaningless pawn moves here, and I gradually push my pawns forward, and h5 was not a good choice, but you can see this is already winning for white here, so there's just no way for black to defend this position. The extra pawns over here will be used to distract his king, and once his king is out of the way, then my king can come forward, and I could even I didn't even have to play this move. I played this move to defend the pawn and just take away all options from my opponent, but I could have just continued charging on with my king. This is also a way to win, because the king is just going to come forward and chase the rook away, and I'll get a queen, and I'll just be a piece up if he trades the rook for the queen. So at this point, let's go back to the final position in the game. Yeah, I just at this point I defended my pawn with the rook, and my opponent resigned. So I thought that was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.